Welcome back to another epidose of these crazy people that just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. I'm Tom, and this is Justin, of course. So,
Hello,
Justin,
hello.
what are we talking about today?
Hey, we're talking about welcoming everyone back to the channel, making sure you hit that like button, making sure you share, subscribe, leave a comment, ask a question, rant yourself, complain. It's there for you. Yeah, let's burn out YouTube's servers. Let's have so many comments, so many shares that YouTube's like, what's going on? What is this? This came out of
Make some
nowhere.
smoke in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, make some smoke in Silicon Valley. If you want to talk about Musk and his doggy, that's okay. Yeah, so my wife, um, she's like, "Did you hear about Elon Musk? Him and his doggy fired a bunch of people." And I was like, "What do you mean, honey? Him and his doggy?" She's like, "Yeah, his doggy." I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Do you mean Doge?" She's like, "It's doggy, Doge." So it's Elon Musk and his doggy. Maybe you've been invited to the Oval Office. Maybe you've been people complimented you on your attire at the Oval Office. Maybe I think Tom would certainly get complimented by his attire at the Oval Office.
Gonna hang out with what's his name? The guy who wears the hoodie and shorts.
Oh yeah, Fetterman. I think
Betterman,
it's
yeah.
yeah, Fetterman. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he's a man of the people. They say.
Where's he from?
Great.
Michigan?
Is it Michigan? It might be
I think it's
Michigan.
Michigan,
It's Michigan, yeah. See, if Tom runs for president, he will be the first president ever in a singlet. Just
yeah. By a singlet, he means tank top.
not the
Speaking dingo
Olympic
lingo,
singlet. Yeah.
Spe- by the way, I didn't hear from Joe today. Wonder where
Oh,
Dingo Lingo is.
I hope he's all right. He's doing all right. So yeah, just kind of an interesting carnivore conversation I had earlier today. I work with a gentleman who's I believe he's taller than Tom. So he's got to be like 6'2", maybe 6'4", bit bigger dude. He's on the operations team. Super cool dude though. But he knows, just like most of everyone I work with knows, I only eat meat. And he's like, man, how are you not bigger than a house eating all that meat? He's like, when I ate meat all the time, he's gone vegetarian or something now, or he's been like vegetarian for a year or something. And he's like, when I ate all that meat, I felt like I was just gaining weight like crazy. And he's like, it must be portion control. You must just, watch your calories, portion control. And
Yeah,
Tom's laughing because Tom
portion.
knows me. I'm certainly not an advertisement of portion control. Um,
Your form of portion control is how much you can fit in your refrigerator.
how much can fit on a plate?
How much can fit in an air fryer. That's how you control your portions.
Yeah, yeah. And then, I was telling him that, like, when I went out with some of our other coworkers, I ate a 23-ounce steak and a half rack of ribs and a bowl of chili. Um, and so he's like, "What? How? Like you're small." I tried to explain to him about the Randall cycle. I think we all got distracted on another topic. But the funny part is that people are so used to eating meat with breads, pastas,
Baked potato,
baked potato, French fries, right? That like when people say
coleslaw,
yeah, coleslaw.
baked beans,
What was that, Tom?
baked beans,
Baked beans, yeah,
broccoli.
broccoli, yeah, just yeah. That when people say that they've eaten a lot of meat, they're talking about meals that had meat in it. They're not talking about, maybe on a good barbecue day, but even on a good barbecue day, people are still having a side of mashed potatoes, maybe some French fries, some beans, like you said, some coleslaw, right? Like a garlic bread. Even if you get to a barbecue place, there's usually that barbecue, that garlic bread on the plate too, right?
Hmm.
And so people just it's so normal that it's not even calculated in what they're eating. Like they see it as they've eaten a lot of meat, and I think that's just part of the propaganda and part of the culture or the advertising of your brain forgets about the carbs, but because people say meat is bad, you focus on the meat. Super easy to do, right? It's the carnivore saying or the meme of, don't blame sugar, bread, and seed oils on meat. What caused all that, right? I think I
Right.
butchered it, but you get what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Um, and so to him, he's like, "Oh man, I was eating so much meat," but it's like I'm eating more meat now than I ever have in my life, and my health is better than ever. Um, and so people just have a difficulty making that connection. Um, it's interesting to talk to people and just their perception being that way. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying they're bad for having that. They just don't know, don't understand. They haven't walked this path that flips the perception of you probably weren't eating that much meat, in
Right.
hindsight, you know, um, because it's a whole different perspective and a whole different game and understanding when you're only eating meat and you're not having those sides.
For sure. Well, even in general, like all the conversations we've had with people, and somebody goes, "Oh, I eat high fat," and then somebody else goes, "Oh, I eat high protein," or whatever. And then when you find out what they actually eat, they're not necessarily that far apart, you know. So, the average person tends to seem to start around 50-50, like meat to fat ratio. That's your typical ribeye status.
Right.
And then you throw in the people who might be eating leaner cuts, but like we were talking about before we started recording, we know people that eat sticks of butter, right?
Right.
And I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, yeah, I know plenty of people that just munch down an entire stick of butter. I've never actually sat and just ate a stick of butter, but I think I'm going to try it. So I do use butter with things, and I put butter on things. If I'm eating a piece of meat and it's kind of dry, just put some butter on it.
Right.
You know,
Definitely.
if I don't have any fat in the pan or whatever. So, um, your conversation about the guy, being vegetarian or vegan and formerly supposedly eating a lot of meat made me think of recent Joe Rogan podcast. He had Woody
Okay.
Harrelson on,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and Woody Harrelson's apparently a vegan. And
Vegetarian, I think. Yeah.
yeah, he's something like one or the other, right? And
Yeah.
so he's talking, and I was like, Rogan didn't say, "Oh yeah, pretty much eat carnivore." I mean, Rogan eats a lot of meat, but then he indulges in some pasta and stuff like that when he feels like it. Of course, the guy's in great shape. So
Right.
you hear about how much he says he works out. Like he starts his morning early, and it's like cold shower, sauna, workout. And it's like a 2-hour regime every morning of
Right.
training. It's like, I wish I had that kind of time. It's like,
Right.
I got to change my entire life around to have that kind of time. I would like to be working out in the morning, and I usually am working out in the evening instead. And I'm working out for an hour, you know,
Right.
and not 2 hours. And I don't have a cold plunge. I have a hard time talking myself into a cold shower in the morning. I haven't done it in a while. I don't have the cattle tub anymore. But you think, maybe that's what it takes to be in that great of shape. And I think Rogan's probably a couple years older than I am, something like that. Of course,
Yeah, I want to say.
he's been
Yeah.
an athlete. I think he's like 56 or so.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he's been an athlete his whole life too. It's kind of like trying to compare yourself to Sean. It's like, dude's been an athlete his whole life. I wasn't that.
Right.
I wasn't an athlete till I got into my 40s. So,
Hey,
but
there's something I've done that Joe Rogan's scared to do.
what's that?
When I did the 3-day dry fast, Joe
Mm,
Rogan's never done a dry fast. It's kind
mm,
of interesting. He's like kind of terrified of it, which is I find kind of funny. It's not fun, but he does a lot, he's all about that challenging himself. And I mean, I'm not saying he has to, but it's funny that there's something that I've done in that realm that he hasn't. So I
You know, and they
think that's
brought up fasting in that podcast. You know, Woody pointed out that fasting is a great fix for a lot of things, you know, and they did
yeah,
talk that didn't talk about dry fasting, but they talked about
right.
fasting. Yeah. At least it came up.
Yeah, I think, like we say, these are just a toolbox. These are tools. I think people have a really hard time if they do none of these things. And then pulling each of these levers properly can have like various results. I mean, there are a lot of people that the Jason Fung crowd of they just eat once a day and they're able to eat quote unquote whatever they
Mhm.
want, and they do pretty damn well. And that's kind of my wife's approach, to be honest. My wife does one meal a day in the afternoon, basically, and then that's all she eats. Do I wish it was more on the keto carnivore spectrum? Of course I do, but I know that with her just eating once a day, that's good for her, So like I'm not freaking out over her like not having breakfast. You know what I mean? Um, Sometimes she'll go like a couple of days without eating, but she feels fine, and like it's not like I feel like if you say that in the more like normal realm, people will be like, "Oh my God, you're letting your wife go a couple days without eating?" It's like, isn't that a disorder? Shouldn't you have her looked out or something? And it's like, no, that's really not that big of a deal, you know.
Yeah.
She's not sick, she's not like vomiting from it, or she's not passing out, nothing like that. And then I work with primarily ladies, and there's a couple of them that you know, say they're hungry and they'll eat like a half box of French fries
Mhm.
and like a Coke. You know what I mean? And it's
Well, and
like,
on the subject of eating,
yes,
you and I have had a lot of meals together over the
yeah.
years, and Justin is literally half my size, and it can out eat me at a meal for sure. I don't know where he puts it. So, anyways,
Yeah, and so I'm a guy that likes to eat 100%. Like if I wasn't carnivore, then yeah, I'd probably be as big as a house. I'd probably be having some hurt knees and back, things
yeah,
like that. I mean, thank God I'm carnivore. And so my body just uses it, just making my bones denser, my teeth stronger, my skin better, you know, energy, from all the fat. I do like my butter too, of course. Um, and so it's just, being in this space, you kind of forget the way other people, run around, and just, it's sad because it's a lot of misinformation, as much as I despise the term. And then back to that Woody Harrelson, malinformation. I think that's a pretty good one. I think there is, I think when it comes to nutrition, there's a lot of malinformation because it's hurting people, sadly. People struggling, the operations team, everyone except for one dude, and he's a younger dude's got a gut, the Teamster gut. I don't know if you've got at your job people that are maybe 40s to 50s older crew that are like Teamster, types or whatever that been working construction or, operations kind of work their whole life, and they've got the beer belly, the gut.
yeah, it's talking about the current events, and then having a guy like Rogan who's meat based, talking to a guy like Woody Harrelson that's plant based, and then uh the doggy going on. We're starting to see less censorship on social media. So, and I'm not sure if that's going to be true here on YouTube or not, but one of the videos we did probably 2 years ago was me, you, Bart. I think Ray was on there, Joe probably. So it got deleted by YouTube.
Mm,
And the topic of conversation was fast food.
Hmm.
and they cited something at like minute 35 or whatever, and it was Bart makes some comment about getting jabbed 6 times,
Uh-huh.
but didn't like draw a conclusion about it. And I was like, what is this? And they deleted the videos, like they weren't even going to let me challenge it.
Oh,
So I think I sent you the link to, I sent you the email with the violation or whatever, because I've
okay.
been pondering it for a while, but I've been thinking about just uploading that video again. Just, I don't know, repost it and see what happens, see if it gets
Yeah.
yanked again. So, yeah, before I forget, let me share that picture of butter. And then I think we were going to talk about autism today, weren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, um, I just happen to have some butter, um, 3 different kinds for various reasons. The one at the top I bought at Sam's Club is just their standard grade A salted butter. And you can see it's kind of a paler color. And then the one in the middle is Kerrygold, which is a grass fed. And then the one at the bottom is Vital Farms. And you can see it's more orangey, darker yellow kind of color. So, and I wanted to point out, I think Vital Farms came up with something that makes a lot of sense. They label it 90% grass fed,
Hmm.
whereas Kerrygold just calls it grass fed. And the reality is that a lot of times when you're raising cows, if the weather doesn't cooperate, you don't have enough grass. So you got to bring in hay or alfalfa. And then a lot of times dairy cows get supplemental feed like cottonseed and stuff like that to help them produce more milk. Kind of depends on the operation. It can even depend on the type of cow and stuff like that. So I thought it was a good idea. They said 90% rather than just saying grass fed, because I don't think there's a hard number on how much of their diet is grass when they're called grass fed, right? I don't think
Right.
people know. But suffice to say, the nutritional profile of grass fed beef and butter is better typically than ones that have a lot more grain in them, you know, and but most people eat them and tolerate regular butter or regular beef quite well. So making the switch to primarily eating meat is the big step, right?
Right. And also probably not cooking in like cottonseed oil.
Right. Well, and that Vital Farms butter was something like $5 or $6 a stick. So it was like, I think I paid $10 or $11 for 2 sticks of butter. The Kerrygold wasn't that bad. It was a little less expensive, and of course, the big brand store stuff was considerably less expensive, and that's always a consideration. Is what can people actually afford, especially now inflation is crazy. Wages have kept up with inflation. We're paying a lot more for food than we were, say, 2 years ago, disproportionately so hopefully a lot of that improves.
Yeah, I would certainly hope that as well. Do you try to always get the grass-fed organic butter, or do you care? Do you notice taste? Is there one that you like the taste of better?
I like them all, to be honest with you. And I noticed less difference in taste, I'd say, with grass-fed butter over grass-fed beef. Because like grass-fed beef from Australia, I could tell right away that's what it is. It's just,
Right,
I think the grass just flavors the beef a little different. It's a different strain of grass over there. And
right.
don't you have a certain area on one of the family farms where the cows are eating that the foliage there, they don't taste so good?
Right, right. Yeah, when my family was doing that, yeah, there was a part that was just, yeah, I was like this. It tasted like fish. Like
Hmm.
it was really the weirdest thing I'd ever eaten as far as like beef. Just the way that it tasted was just really like, yeah,
Yeah, I don't notice the difference in the taste of butter even when it comes from overseas, like the Kerrygold. It tastes very similar to so. I do try and eat the. I eat both. To be honest with you, it depends on um, sometimes availability. And the Vital Farms butter, I've only seen it one supermarket, one location, and not even all the locations have it. I think it was a Rouse, and then the other ones didn't have it. But I'm starting to see other brands, especially now with the egg shortage, starting to see smaller brands eggs. Smaller egg producers that have high quality eggs. Free range chickens. You know,
Right.
pasture raised chicken eggs and stuff like that. And but a dozen of those eggs is usually at least $10. So, that's a consideration, especially when you eat a lot of eggs.
Right, right. Yeah, it certainly can get that part of the diet currently can get um pricey. You can make carnivore as expensive as you want.
Yeah, you could just eat Wagyu.
Right.
Saw somebody making a grilled cheese sandwich on Instagram with Wagyu. They're
Yeah,
cooking the
yeah.
steak, and then was it you that sent it out?
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah, yeah, that was fun. So, anyways, circling back to the topic that we were going to try and cover. We haven't talked about autism so much in a lot of videos recently, but I do have a group on Facebook called Autistic Carnivores, and it's kind of our niche in a way. Um, it's people are on all over the place with it, with how they feel carnivore affects it. There's some people out there claiming, "Oh, it cured my autism. I'm not autistic anymore." But I like to look at it as more of like the better diet reduces the symptoms or improves the symptoms. Many of the symptoms are syndromes that are in the constellation of symptoms. You seem to get better, right?
Right. And of course, I don't know how much you want to touch on this tonight, but the cause debate, right? Um, you know,
Why not?
there, there
Throw it out
there's
there.
there's a website that I can share real quick. I think I can. Um,
Yeah, if you want to send me the link, I'll try and put it in the show notes. I post it.
yeah, I had it just up and now. Oh, that's weird. Why did it open in freaking Edge? Microsoft, damn you. Damn you, Microsoft. Oh, they messed up when you can't move the taskbar. Aren't you upset about that? That you can't
Yeah,
move the taskbar wherever you want anymore? Like,
yeah.
why? Why did you take that away from us?
I like when the taskbar expands and then it's blocking stuff on the screen, and you're like, why is it? What? Like there's an alert buried somewhere.
Right. So this is a website I got from someone called, I think, Autism Librarian on X. Um, and it's quite the exhaustive list, I would say. So you've got, of course, the big V word. I don't know how explicit we want to say it here in this particular video. We've got
Mm.
pesticides, air pollution, acetaminophen, valproate, which I don't know what that is, um, SSRIs, metal toxicity, abortions on here, which I thought was kind of interesting. Uh, phthalates, thalidomide, smoking, screen time, antibiotics, mycotoxins. Yeah, just kind of anything and everything. And I guess like I don't know, like if everything causes it, then I think it's really hard to pinpoint a cause. And it's kind of one of those things of like there's too much noise. Um, and it could just be, I mean, the first, 5 years of life. any child is exposed to all of these things more or less. And yet, although, what is it saying now that 1 in 36 have autism, or 1 in 30 now? Something like that. Um, so is it a combination of all these things? And I don't, and there's a couple that I'm thinking that are missed on here as well. Um, but anyway, it's an interesting website. I can have it in the show notes for other people to look over. I guess it's this particular person's pet project, which good on them. If I were to add one or two, it would be age of conception and age of birth, on the part of the father and the mother. But my guess is more importantly the mother. And then the other part of it is would be the level number of the fat, that the mother gets through pregnancy, and I'm talking animal fats. Um, and I would say the fats after birth. Um, Now, I don't think this only applies to breastfeeding, um, although certainly you get more fats, animal fats in breast milk than formula. Um, but if a mother is on a low fat diet and she's producing milk, will that have some effect? And I'm not throwing this out there demanding answers or anything like that. I'm just trying to spread the open the conversation, and I, I would prefer to focus on things that can be controlled rather than things that cannot be controlled. So like pesticides, there's some control there. Eh, a difficult one, right? Air pollution, again, uh, I don't know. Acetaminophen, sure, don't give your child Tylenol, but then if your child has a high fever, what do you do? You know what I mean? Now, high fever itself, right, could be related to autism as well, or some other brain dysfunction. So, you as a parent, if you're in that situation, what's the decision tree? SSRIs, again, potentially completely avoidable. I understand that. Smoking, more or less, but secondhand smoke is still a big issue in our society, although maybe it's more marijuana smoke rather than nicotine smoke.
Sure. I you
And
know, I smell people smoking weed all the time and rarely come across somebody smoking a cigarette anymore. Like maybe once a week I see somebody smoking a cigarette, but almost daily someone's smoking weed.
right. And then the big nicotine would be like vape right now, and I don't know if there's secondhand vape, or if it dissipates in the atmosphere too quickly or anything like that. Obviously, I would advise against a pregnant mother vaping. I don't That's probably not a good idea. Um, but I don't know where the studies are on that. Um, anyway, but something you could control, right, is the amount of animal fat that you're intaking as an expected parent, as even when your child's young. Now, again, this isn't advice, this isn't medical advice. Please speak to your doctor and other healthcare professionals. Um, but heavy cream is not difficult for the stomach to digest. And so even if you're feeding formula, maybe throwing in some heavy cream in there. Um, I'm not going to say amounts and all that. Dr. Cyrus has some advice on that. I think if you Google there and talk about feeding and formula and stuff, I didn't quite agree with his recommendations. Um, that's neither here nor there. My kid, whenever I'm watching over him, I'm shoveling butter into his mouth, and I think it helps his mood, and helps because butter is pretty satiating, right? And so a lot of the time, if a young one is upset, part of the problem is maybe that they're hungry, right? And so throwing in some extra butter on top of some whatever foods, I think can help keep him full longer. Now there has been an Instagram video going around of a mother giving her child butter before bed, claiming that it got her child to sleep throughout the entire night. That hasn't been my wife and I's experience necessarily, um, but I think the grass-fed organic butter throughout the day, or even if you want something else, right? So again, I'm not going to say I'm the perfect carnivore parent or anything like that. We live in the world that we live in. My wife and I do not see 100% eye to eye on nutrition, and so there's some compromises there on my part, better or worse, whatever. Um, but I feel that instead of focusing on what I disagree with, instead of just taking it upon myself to increase that fat content and that meat content in his diet any way that I can. And I believe, to me, I feel like that helps and that's doing something. No, I don't think my child has autism. He seems to be pretty able to focus and he doesn't scream. And I mean, he gets fussy like any kid does, but he's not, he doesn't have the difficulties that I think I did, or other children that are on the spectrum that those parents, God bless them, go through, because that is really challenging. For those that don't know, my uh, first big boy job was respite care, caring for children with autism throughout the spectrum and throughout the spectrum of disability as well. Um, very, very difficult work. Some of them were more easier. Um, uh, but my kid, he's a boy, right? And so they have, and I wish I could bring it in, and maybe I can go grab it. They have busy board toys, which I think are freaking cool. I love them. Um, and so and they're also advertised as like fidget toys or comfort toys for children with autism. Now, just because my son enjoys this toy doesn't mean that he's autistic. I think it just means he's a kid. And so this could bleed into a conversation of overdiagnosis, right? And proper testing for autism. Um, and the um, maybe the argument of demonization of the male brain, a brain that is more focused on systems, mechanics, ideas, rather than maybe emotions and social cues, which are important, but a hyper masculine brain is certainly more focused on ideas and mechanics and systems, and the research can bear that out. So Tom, I know I've said a lot. Is any of that vibe with you? Have any thoughts?
Yeah. Actually, what I was going to contribute was I've been doing a lot of homework on um, B vitamins and methylation. I've been, looking into that. I mean, doing some testing myself, waiting for some results. And one of the things I looked at was I was looking at some papers on folic acid and autism. And, like the one I got on the screen right now, I'll link in the thing. They start out right away talking about folic acid and how important it is. And of course, the primary subject of most prenatal vitamins is folic acid.
Hmm. Hmm.
But one of the things I've found out more recently is that folic acid is actually not a natural form of folate. And apparently, almost half the population of the planet cannot convert folic acid into folate or any usable form of folate like methylfolate. So we have here in the US, everything but some certain organic versions of grains is sprayed with folic acid. And in some of the studies, that's shown to cause some problems for some people, and children in particular. It seems to trigger some hyperactivity and stuff like that. And some people, since they can't break down or methylate the folic acid, it tends to build up in their bodies and cause various symptoms. So that being said, yeah, I look at these papers about folic acid and autism, um, and I'm sure there's more that I have never even seen. I'm like I'm immediately start by assuming that folic acid is a great uh, enrichment for food or vitamins or whatever.
Mm.
And I think people ought to know that, half the people can't, it's not usable. So anytime you grab bread or grain or whatever, and it says enriched or, what's the other term they use? Fortified.
Fortified,
That means
yeah.
it was sprayed with folic acid. So it's not doing it's not doing everybody any good. So one of the thoughts was that folic acid or a lack of folate um, might contribute to, well, they know it contributes to some birth defects, but it might also contribute to autism. So, and some of the research over the last few years, what they've done is they've been able to spot autistic brains forming in utero. So, um, I, it's kind of not entirely clear to me about how accurate it is. Kind of depends on who you're talking to, but some of the autism clearly is happening in the womb. It's really just that the brain or nervous system is forming differently than what's typical. So there was also that study that showed that the higher the mother's glucose was, the more likely the child was to be autistic. And I think it seems fairly clear that there's some genetic tendencies towards autism, right? So
Right,
I it clearly seems like one of those subjects where there's a lot of factors involved. And of course autism includes a broad spectrum of symptoms, but primarily it comes down to the formation of the brain, right?
right.
So that, and I think, this is my personal opinion. I think what people are seeing when they see a kid get some medicine and they seem to think it's causing autism, I think what's really going on is that the immune system is getting triggered, and there's probably a lot of inflammation as a result. Because usually this is accompanied with symptoms like fever and uh, flu-like symptoms, stuff like that. And I think the additional um, immune system activation on somebody who's young and still developing can actually make some of uh, the development more irregular, causing some of the autistic symptoms to be stronger. So that seems to be what's going on. That kind of explains why people observe, parents observe this in their children, and at the same time, we can see it in the womb, right? So, triggering the immune system, causing inflammation and stuff like that is, it's no surprise that that's going to have a profound effect on a developing brain, right?
Right. Yeah, that certainly makes sense. And, fat is pretty anti-inflammatory, right? The animal fat. And so maybe that's part of why it works. I don't know if, how now there have been, and I think even in autistic carnivores, some near miraculous healing, quote unquote, and most notably in the community of those that are nonverbal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Becoming verbal, which is one of the more frustrating, I think, symptoms for parents, especially. Um, and that communication piece, which is a great thing. Um, and I think Jules would be an excellent one to have on about this. It's kind of right in her wheelhouse if we do another one. Um, I'm still not formally diagnosed, but rumor has it. um, Tom, of course, I think you're fine with me saying this as you've said it in other videos, but diagnosed later in life in your 40s, from
30s.
your 30s. Okay.
Yeah, I was like 15, 20 years ago now. And it was a complete surprise to me. It does explain a lot. So
And there's arguments about getting diagnosed, not getting diagnosed. Of course, we should have a special shout out to, oh man, what's his name? I feel terrible, but Doctor, we've had him on the show too.
Mason?
From a no, from Australia. Yeah, he's Joe went and did like their whole brain scans and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it starts with a C, but
Yeah, right. That's where Joe got the brain mapping done.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so there are other people doing some fantastic work out there,
Hmm.
with it as well. Um, so yeah, there's hope. But for a variety of reasons, Tom and I have a lot of heart for the autistic community. Where I'm at currently at work, I have some parents and grandparents that are like, I have so and so relative that's autistic, really struggling, and it's rough. I wish I could help them more, but that's not my role at my job. Trying to get in a different role later in my career that maybe I can speak out more while get paid. Of course, I could speak out online and do these videos and things like that to scratch this itch. Um, but I think the symptom reduction, whatever it is, because it's just a different way that the brain is forming, um, and it's always trying to survive. And evolution does not evolve anything that is useless, right? So
And there is a
it
list
has.
of chemicals too that is, known to cause autism. I keep forgetting to include that. So I
And
believe it's under the context that if the mother's exposed to these chemicals while she's pregnant.
right, and there's you know cause is always a tricky thing to suss out, because a womb and a mother in gestation, um, gets exposed to a lot, you know, stress, right? Um, on top of that, poor diet, possibly. Um, they talk about an epidemic of women dying during childbirth, especially among the quote unquote underserved communities. And what is that about? And those particular communities sadly eat a lot of processed food, right? Or the term food deserts, where like they're typically grabbing something at a gas station or a liquor store. Aside from the jerky and hot dogs, there's not a whole lot, and maybe the water. There's not a whole lot good for you there at the liquor store, sadly. Um,
I just looked this up real quick. So according to the NIH, you know, uh, it depends on how you feel about the NIH these days after the the Fauci news. But anyways, they say air pollution, pesticides, bisphenol A, phthalate mercury, and then nutritional deficiency in folic acid and vitamin D and or fatty acids. So, of course, vitamin D deficiency seems to be very common.
mhm,
Um, and again, they say folic acid rather than folate, right?
right.
And to be fair, you can eat food that has a lot of natural folate in it, like eggs and meat and stuff like that. And if you have one of the genes, one of the SNPs that interferes with production, usually of like enzymes that convert or methylate the things like folate into a usable form, then you could still be deficient in usable folate. So you can they do make supplements, methylfolate supplements. So, and if you have if you use a B complex vitamin that's designed with folated versions of the
Methylated
methylated folic
folate.
acid. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they do make supplements, and like a single capsule complex uh, that are methylated. So anyways, there you go. Maybe, vitamin D wasn't even really on my radar, though. I probably read it before, so when doing the homework. But and I mean, how many times have we heard that vitamin D deficiency is a chronic, widespread problem?
Oh yeah, I used to have a vitamin D deficiency.
Well, and it was, I think, the leading contributor to deaths with the modern pestilence,
Right.
according to. But I think that information came from NIH, so fair to be skeptical. Although I don't think that's something that's unlikely. So it's probably no need to be that skeptical of it.
Right. Yeah. And so, cause, do we, I mean, hopefully we kind of get to this good picture, but, um, like the work of Chris Palmer focusing on the mitochondria, right?
Mhm.
And that kind of ties back in this methylation. And so, what's good for your mitochondria is good for you. Um, and it's an interesting concept because when we eat, we think we're feeding us, the ego self, when
Mhm.
it's like you're feeding chemical processes or disrupting chemical processes, as well as mitochondria and many other cells. So, the focus should be on feeding them, feeding your biome, let's say, not so focused on the microbiome or the gut microbiome as everyone likes to talk about, because that's just there's that's such a minefield of what's a good biome, what's a bad biome, and people, there's so many supplements and probiotics of give you this, we know like candida is bad, right? Like overgrowth of candida, but there's not a whole lot past that that's really been identified. The best way I've heard it is what's a good microbiome, and it's just like the biome of a healthy person and don't have C. diff or like a tapeworm, you know. Um, Looking at you, raw carnivores, we love you, but um, I don't think that's particularly necessary. But don't mind some raw meat here and there. It's not getting down on it, but I'd rather people not get ill from some foodborne pathogen if it could be avoided.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, when it comes to eating, you don't want to get sick, or when it comes to exercising, you don't want to get injured. You don't want that
right.
back. I mean, if you got some, you're about to, you're a professional athlete, or whatever, you're going to take more risks with stuff like that. But for the rest of us, you want to work out safe and eat pretty safe. And I'm not, I've eaten plenty of raw meat, but,
Mm,
I make sure sourced well, and then it's not contaminated and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily believe anybody needs to eat raw meat. I would like particularly raw beef. And of course, people eat raw fish all the time.
right.
Millions of people a day eat raw fish. And actually, raw beef is pretty common in a lot of countries, including the US, Japan, Ethiopia, on and on and on. So,
Yeah, no doubt. So no shade on our raw carnivores. Much love to you as well. Um, yeah, it's kind of where it's sitting, and I'm glad that people are.
lean forward a little bit. When you lean back, the audio goes down for some reason. You
Oh,
barely tilt your head back and the volume goes down.
oh, okay. It must be like where the mic is.
It must be, yeah.
Yeah. Um, what was I saying? Oh, I'm happy people are coming with solutions before we have this cause figured out. I feel that having a solution is, of course, prevention is the best cure. Absolutely. Um, but I think when it comes down to it, it's just trying to be as healthy as you can, especially if you're trying to get pregnant, which there's kind of a saying in the carnivore community, go carnivore, get pregnant. It's like there's so many stories of people either struggling to have kids or even not struggling to have kids, and then the woman goes on carnivore or goes meat based, and then within a month she's or 3 months she's pregnant. Which is kind of interesting. So, and you don't really hear those stories in the vegan community. There's Dr. Kiltz, right, who's a hormonal gynecologist, or but I know he's a pregnancy specialist. I forget what the
Hmm.
name of it is. And he's Mr. Eggs, Bacon, Butter, Beef. Yeah, his BBB diet or whatever, for to increase consumption. So I don't remember that going around in the vegan community of how to increase consumption. Of course they think, don't have another kid because it'll kill animals or something silly like that. Um, and I think if you are trying or you have to feed formula, try to find one that doesn't have a whole lot of seed oils, that's milk based, not plant based. I would highly discourage that. And just make sure your kid and yourself is getting plenty of animal fat and animal protein, compared to alternatives. Um, and I do believe in the healing up to a point, of course. So, there's many of us that didn't start on this path until our 30s and later, having fantastic results, continuing to have fantastic results. Um, so if you're like, hey, watching this and like, my kid's a teenager, he just wants grilled cheese and popcorn. Um, I get it. First, I was ill. I mean, I was eating Carl's Jr. cheeseburgers, um, you know, kid cuisine with the chocolate brownie and the corn. I,
Well,
the
this question comes up a lot, right? It's like people are like, how do I get my kid to change their diet? It's pretty common for autistic kids to be very, very picky eaters,
right,
So, a lot of it, a lot of times what people do is they start with the really tasty stuff like bacon. It's like, well, will they eat bacon? Because
right,
that's a good start. Will they eat a hot dog? Because you're better off eating a hot dog than you are a Twinkie or, something like that, right?
right.
And, the quality of hot dogs varies, the ingredients vary. So you can get a good quality hot dog and then you can make a bacon hot dog, right? So
Right.
you're moving in the right direction. And then it's like, will they eat any form of eggs? Scrambled eggs, sunny side up,
Hard boiled.
boiled. Yeah. So that's another thing is start finding the foods that they're comfortable with and willing to eat, and it's just increasing the levels of them gradually, you know. And
The
then
butter will increase until morale improves.
and I always tell people, remind them this is going to help them feel better, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's a big motivator. And then if they try it and they do feel better, then a lot of times the motivation is there for them. They're like, oh wow, yeah, I felt better, and then I went back to how I used to eat and I feel worse. So just to keep reminding them of that. And a lot of times that's what people need to get over the hump. It's just going, oh man, I felt so much better, I'm going to go back to it, and I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try eating a pork chop or chicken breast or whatever kind of meat it is. I'm gonna go diving, get myself an octopus,
and
chew it up. So whatever
I
it is.
think one of the, I don't know, easiest signs maybe is, a lot of kids with autism or adults have a lot of stomach inflammation, right? Like bowel inflammation. And so if you give them stuff or they're able to eat well for a day and their stomach doesn't hurt, I think they'll remember that, and I think that'll make a real impact, regardless of other things. As well as, was it Sally Norton that discovered that children with autism have a more difficult time excreting or processing out the oxalates as well, or was that
We
research
have
done
higher
by
levels of oxalates,
it's
right? Yeah.
right?
So, um, uh, and it's kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg. Are they eating higher oxalate foods, or are they having trouble eliminating it, or both?
Right.
And again, I don't know. I've been trying to find the if there's any numbers, studies that were done that correlate like methylation impairment with autism, because again, maybe part of the problem is not being able to methylate the oxalic acid so it can be excreted or something like that. Who knows,
Mm.
right? So, because again, I haven't found the number of how much more or less likely you are to have the mutated genes for methylation if you're diagnosed as an autistic person. But in anecdotally, autistic people seem to have a much higher incidence of that, and like you said, and digestive issues, right? And so
Yeah.
one might wonder, since there does seem to be somewhat of a genetic component to autism, maybe it goes hand in hand with things like impaired methylation. So it's kind of one of those questions I'm working on myself because I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Um, yeah, and the citizen scientist. You go. Solving the mysteries of the day
Yep.
with your AI ducks.
Well, that's kind of the thing. The nice thing about AI is it's does a good job of pulling studies for you. So
And if it doesn't know, it'll just make it up.
right, at least it's not actually writing fake studies yet. So.
Right,
But it can give you a false answer for sure, right?
right.
So, anyways, well, so we wrap this one up.
I think we should wrap it up.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for watching. We look forward to your comments. Let us know what kind of topics excite you and what kind of questions you have about meat-based lifestyle or carnivore or autistic symptoms or whatever it is. Feel free to you can just comment on the YouTube notes, and I'm trying to get the videos up on X as well. And right now, at least the links to the YouTube videos are on, or I'm starting to put them up on X. So you can comment there,
Right,
comment in this on the comments on YouTube, and you can send us an email. I'll try and put the email link in the show notes too, but it's just meetmosaic5@gmail. So the Meet Mosaic 5. So, and of course, any hate mail you send directly to Justin.
right. Of course.
Yeah. So, but anyways, until next time, whatever you do,
You don't fall down the carb hole,
oh,
hole,
oh,
hole, the
oh,
dopey hole.
that too.